And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up, right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H., and before I introduce my co-host, I have to play this song to kick off the show.
No, wait. If it's copyrighted music, we'll get a content ID when I put this show on YouTube. I know what song you were going to play. Start spreading the news. I want to be a part of it. New York.
And my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
Yes, they legalized it by a vast majority of the New York Assembly, 113 to 25. It is only the first step. They still have to lay down regulations and licensing, but New York has now made mixed martial arts legal. And both Bellator and UFC sent out press releases celebrating this fact.
So the only thing right now that is lacking, basically the only step now is the signature of the governor. I think then they have to build the rules, regulations, all that stuff.
Right, but Mario
Cuomo, it's signed off,
I'm pretty sure that Cuomo already said he'd sign it.
Yeah, well, how many times has the politician said one thing and done another?
Right, but they know this would be a major financial boon to the state of New York for having legalized MMA and having big events like UFC come there. They can't possibly turn down the tax revenue.
So we've talked about this ad nauseum at times, and we've said time and time again, it's going to happen eventually. And, you know, there was rumblings this past weekend about this being a possibility, and now that it's here and it's just one signature away from becoming legit now, man, it's one of those days, you know, that the sport is going to remember.
It's the last domino to fall. It was finally time. All the other states had all long since legalized MMA. It was just New York that was standing alone against the tide, and finally the tide overwhelmed them.
I mean, they could have amateur MMA bouts in New York. They couldn't have professional ones.
Yeah, that's why it was so ridiculous. In fact, let me read from Lorenzo Fertitta's statement because he directly addressed this point. He said, and I quote, "Joe Morrell has worked tirelessly to educate his colleagues and build support for legalizing professional MMA and regulating both professional and amateur MMA. He has worked closely with Senator Joe Griffo, who shepherded this effort in the Senate, where the bill was passed with strong bipartisan support for the last 7 years, and MMA owes both a huge debt of gratitude."
If you want to get angry, if you want to get pissed off...
Well, we are the Angry Marks, after all.
There was someone, one of the, what do you call them? I know the Canadian term, but...
Assemblymen.
Assemblyman. Okay, assemblyman. There was an assemblyman who compared MMA to gay porn.
Yeah.
And this assemblyman he is in fact a homosexual.
Yeah.
His sister is a homosexual because he is the brother of Rosie O'Donnell.
I don't even know what to tell you. I heard that. I heard some of the comments of the people who were opposed to the bill, but the whole point
Savagery and...
Yeah, the point is they're in the minority. The vote shows that.
Yeah, it's like 117,
113 to 25. Remember those numbers. It's more important than the score of any fight that took place in UFC last week. It's 113 to 25 in favor. That's an overwhelming majority of the New York Senate.
So before today, the only way you could fight UFC fights in Madison Square Garden would be on a video game.
Exactly. And of course, you know what this means. Chris Weidman gets his rematch with Luke Rockhold at Madison Square Garden. It's going to happen now.
Yeah. I hate to think what ticket prices are going to be for that one.
Probably better to try to get a press credential to go to that fight, because you won't be able to afford the ticket.
Yeah. I just... You think about the last domino falling, and... It took how many years and how many
7
arguments?
I just read it. 7 years. That's
no. I know that's 7 years on like this main stage, but you gotta think how much time and effort and money and negotiations, and you could run down the laundry list of what hurdles that the MMA movement, I guess you could say, took and had to have to get this done.
Well, this is why everybody in all major organizations is celebrating right now. Here, let me read you the statement from Scott Coker, because I already read you the one from Lorenzo Fertitta. Here's what Bellator's Scott Coker had to say. Quote, "The New York Assembly's vote to legalize MMA is a watershed moment for this incredible sport. As someone who's been promoting combat sports for more than 30 years, this is a very exciting time for mixed martial arts. We at Bellator MMA are very much looking forward to hosting an event in the crown jewel of America, New York. Liam McGarry and Malcolm Scalvo both call New York home, and I know it means a great deal to both of them, as does for the entire promotion. We've already been in contact with the Barclays Center and several other incredible venues, and we can't wait to bring our world-class athletes to the Empire State."
You mean they're not going to try Madison Square Garden as well?
I'm guessing UFC will lock down the Garden. It'll be like TNA trying to run a show in New York City. They'll have to go to the Hammerstein Ballroom because WWE isn't going to let them in the Garden.
Yeah, the arena exclusivity of Madison Square Garden, I mean, that's been the big promotion ever since I can remember.
But that's why they're already talking about the Barclays Center in their press release. It's like, you know what? UFC can have the Garden. We'll go to Barclays. Hey, it's good enough for Raw. It's good enough for us.
Do you think they'd sell it out?
I bet you they could sell at the Barclays Center if they put on the right fight.
I don't know, man.
Hey, they're already promoting the fact that Liam McGarry, even though he's from Europe, they're saying that Liam McGarry calls New York home. They're already pushing this idea. They're putting it out there right now. So you line up.
Liam McGarry is from New York. Okay.
They said that he calls New York his home, which means that's who he trains with. That's where he trains out of. So they're going for this idea right now. They're already planting the seeds and waiting for it to blossom.
So I don't have this in front of me, but I mean, the Weidman-Rockhold fight, is there a date?
I believe a date has been suggested, but I'm not going to give it off the top of my head because I don't know it for a fact and I haven't seen it confirmed.
Yeah.
All I know is it wouldn't be until after the UFC's annual 4th of July Expo / Fan Pavilion / Fight Week International. It'd be sometime after that.
Yeah, I'm thinking 201, 202, 203. I mean, it's not going to be it's definitely going to be a pay-per-view.
Right. It's not going to be before 200. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, it'd be in the near future. Now, there's another fighter in the UFC umbrella that is rumored to be making a UFC debut soon.
Yes.
Cyborg Santos.
Yeah, I believe it's been talked about that she would fight under UFC's umbrella because they're paying her UFC money anyway, so they feel like they need to get the most return for their dollar.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to pay the money, I mean, it makes sense to have her fight, but
can we please, and I mean no disrespect to you when I say this, but can we please shut up with the idea of Cyborg versus Rousey now, because we got Holly Holm, Miesha Tate, and Ronda Rousey all in the mix with each other at this point. We don't need Cyborg. She is completely out of the picture.
The only fight I could see from that scenario is if Tate beats Rousey and beats her so bad that Rousey needs a fight to, you know what I mean? Like, she got beat by Holm, she got beat by Tate. She needs a comeback fight. Fuck, there's someone who's been wanting to fight her for years.
Yeah, well, I think if Rousey lost that badly, she'd probably retire.
Yeah? Yeah. No doubt, go to Hollywood. There's another, I'm just jumping around to different fights because, I mean, the MMA news, that just launched, a couple hours ago?
Well,
So it's still very fresh, so.
why don't we talk about something that's a little less fresh then, but is still fresh enough for this show? How about the fact that it's been revealed what Kimbo and Ken failed for at Bellator 149?
This I don't know.
They failed for nandrolone.
Steroid.
You got it. And, as a bonus, Ken Shamrock also tested positive for opiates.
What?
Yeah, methadone.
What?
I'm dead
Meth.
serious.
Meth.
You're flabbergasted. You don't know what to say right now.
Meth.
Methadone. That's not the same as crystal meth. Methadone.
Okay, because you cut. All I heard was methadone. On my end, you cut out, and I was like, meth?
No.
What?
Well, methadone is what they give to recovering opiate addicts to wean them off of hard drugs. I don't know if that's going to fly if he uses that as an explanation, because it can also be a pain reliever. He's got a problem. He tested positive for not one, but two different things.
Did you hear about the new fight that's been added to UFC 198 in Brazil?
I've read about so many new fights being added to cards. You're going to have to refresh my memory.
Okay, I'm gonna quote my wife on this because she had the best comparison to this. Did you ever see the movie Jurassic Park?
Of course.
Do you remember when they dropped the animal into the pen there and it gets destroyed within 5 seconds? Uriah Hall is fighting someone in Brazil.
Who is he fighting?
Uriah Hall from Ultimate Fighter, who lost in the main event, is fighting the soon-to-be Hall of Famer, Anderson Silva.
That smells like a setup fight if I ever heard one.
What possible outcome would make both these fighters look stronger at the end of this? If Silva wins, he beats a tough fighter finalist. If Uriah Hall wins, you just jobbed Silva in Brazil.
Well, if Silva wins, he gets a big win in front of his hometown crowd, and he can say he's back on the winning track. And if Hall wins, he can say he beat a UFC legend, and that makes him a legit contender in the class. I'm looking at it completely different from you. I like this idea.
Why?
I honestly think it's another scenario because Silva probably needs to retire anyway, and if he loses to Uriah Hall, he might as well. He can cut a farewell speech right there in Brazil.
Yeah, but he's got how many fights left on that contract, though?
That doesn't mean he has to take all of them. UFC could just say, thank you for your service, we'll keep you under contract and use you for video games and promotional tours, but we won't give you fights. We'll just pay you to be under contract. You know, they might just do that to keep him from going anywhere else.
I'm looking at the rankings right now. Silva's number 6 and Hall is number 10.
So there you go.
So if
he wins, he's back in contention, and if he loses, he can retire.
If Hall wins, how far up in those rankings does he go?
Well, I would wait to tell you the answer to that until they send me the advisory that goes out before all UFC events, because it usually gives you some pretty clear indication of how far up you should advance a fighter if he wins. It'll say something like, with big wins over X and X, you could move so-and-so up 2 or 3 spots, but he probably wouldn't advance beyond X, who he holds a loss to. That usually gives you that kind of advice.
I'll read you the rankings, Stevie, and you'll get a better idea of the rankings here. Silva 6, Whitaker 7, Mousasi 8, Kennedy 9, Uriah Hall is 10.
Yeah, maybe you could move him up a couple spots then. I don't know if he could move all the way up.
I don't think he goes past Whitaker if he wins.
He might, but that would be at the outside.
I think, Hall and Mousasi?
That could be a very good fight if things line up that way. We'll see.
Someone's getting knocked the hell out if that happens.
Probably. I really didn't give Mousasi enough credit in his last fight because I thought ladies would be able to catch him and take him down, and boy was I wrong about that.
Yep, what's the old saying? You were a fool.
Yeah, I was not a prognosticator. I was a fool, but you live and you learn, and Mousasi has still got enough gas in the tank, even though he's had a lot of fights. It's apparent it hasn't caught up to him yet.
Alright, so before we move on to this past weekend's show in Australia, there's a few fights that I have thoughts on because this was the card of, there's a few sweet rants you could go on here, but before we go there, I do want to mention there was another fight added to the Ottawa card here on June 18th.
That's correct.
Friend of the show, Patrick the Predator Cote, is fighting the Cowboy, Donald Cerrone.
That's right. That's a featured fight. So something you can look forward to right there in your hometown. You get to see the Cowboy and Cote go at it.
And the main event is still Wonderboy Thompson against Aries Rory McDonald.
Knock on wood, pray that nobody gets injured between now and then.
I heard this brought up on another show, Stevie. I want to get your 2 cents in on this. UFC has a problem here.
What's the problem?
The fight in Ottawa is Rory's last fight on his contract.
They'll re-up him.
Yeah, well, you don't think Bellator would make a move?
I think that they'll offer more than Bellator would. They would exercise their matching rights clause and make any offer that Bellator made for Aries completely ridiculous. They would go past it. Bellator would not be able to match.
The only scenario I could see for that is if, say, Aries does lose. He gets knocked the hell out in that championship fight, and he gets beat by Thompson in Aries' home country.
Well, in that case, Bellator could make a lowball offer because he'd be damaged goods.
If you have someone who's on their last fight and they want to stay in the promotion, that's back against the wall type of thing there.
Honestly, though, if you're somebody that's important to the future of your company, your team, your promotion, I've said this so many times, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse by saying it again, but you don't wait till the last fight. You don't wait till the last year of the contract. You renew before it expires. You go in and you make an offer and you say, this is how much we care about you. We're coming to you before your contract is up and offering you more to stay. That's how it works in the sports world. When you wait until a contract expires, it's kind of like a fuck you. You actually have to come back early before it expires to let people know how much you appreciate it.
I like how you said sports and not combat sports on that one.
I think it's a maxim of the sports world in general. You don't hear about a star pitcher for the Dodgers or the Jays letting their contract run out and not being given an offer unless they've decided that pitcher is totally washed up and they don't need to make an offer.
Well, we've seen it in pro wrestling.
Same thing happens there, yeah. If you wait and let the contract expire, you're basically saying, it's not important to us. Do what you want.
Well, I mean, I flash back to Rick Rude and Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah. You let a contract run out, you can have somebody working a taped show one night and be on somebody else's show the next night.
Or Rampage Jackson fighting for UFC. Oh, sorry, Supreme, going to the courts to see if he can fight, and then for one night only he fought in Montreal and went right back to Bellator.
Well, that's because the injunction didn't hold up in the end. He found out that Bellator's contract was valid and they still had enforcement of it. So he had to go back, tail between his legs, and say he was happy to be in Bellator, whether he really is or not.
Do you think he's happy in Bellator now that he's back there?
I think he'll say he is until his contract expires, or else they'll probably sue him for breach of contract like he tried to sue them. So he probably has to shut up and be happy.
I was thinking about this. What do you do with Rampage and Bellator? Because in theory, he could go up to heavyweight.
In theory, they can pretty much do anything they want as long as they tell him you got to fight and it's on this date. He has to honor whatever fights he's got left. So that's really up to Bellator. They get to call the shots right now.
Well, we're going to move on. We'll talk more news in a bit there, but we should talk about Fight Night 85, Hunt versus Mir in Brisbane, Australia.
You want to start with the main event?
There was one fight on the prelims I was going to talk about, but I can't recall which one it was in my notes. I didn't write it down that well. Oh yeah, it was the Hooker Advita fight.
Okay, yeah. Mark Kadiva,
Hooker
right?
won with the guillotine 86 seconds into the first round. Just choked him out. It was like, and fight, and that's a submission. Okay, moving on. We'll talk about, let's talk about the main event. I've got other thoughts about Magny and Lombard and Boston Tahuna, but yeah, let's go with the main event.
Right. Well, I like the quote from Mark Hunt after the fight, which, in my view, pretty well sums up the fight itself. He was in dreamland. I felt I'd done enough. Because Mark Hunt just one sweet punch to the jaw of Frank Mir, and Frank Mir just landed straight on his back, looking up, seeing birds circling around his head. And Mark Hunt just simply walked away. He didn't try to go for ground and pound. He didn't think he needed to throw another shot, and the referee waved it off immediately, so he made the right call there to just walk away from that one. 3 minutes, 1 second of the very first round. Mark Hunt, as I predicted, destroyed Frank Mir. And who picked Frank Mir in that fight? Now tell us, who picked Frank Mir?
Yeah.
You were the fool. You were not the prognosticator. You were the fool.
At first, I thought that knockout punch by Hunt was behind the head.
No, it was a clean shot. It was right.
It was a clean shot, but at that first look, that's why you have replays. That's what they, you know what I mean, to make sure. But
well, it looked like Mir might have been trying to drop levels or duck under it, but he ducked right into it.
Yeah, and then it was funny because on one replay, it looks like he missed him with the punch and just kind of pushed him over.
Well, the way that Frank Mir fell down, I can see how you might have drawn that conclusion, because he went straight backward on his back.
He's like, what just happened here? Oh, man.
He probably didn't know what country he was in. He probably didn't know where the hell he was.
What do you think about... Do you think this is the end of Frank Mir?
I really don't know what you do with Frank Mir after a loss like that.
I'm sure they can figure out something.
Yeah, well, all I know is that signature right hand of Mark Hunt's, he can win any fight with anybody at any time. And I'm not saying he will, but he needs to fight guys that are at or above his ranking, because he's got that one-punch knockout power to beat anybody, and that's the kind of fights you want to see is, can he knock out any of these guys ranked ahead of him? Can he get back the heavyweight contender again? I know you'd look at his record and you'd think that's not a great prospect, but then you look at his record of fights in UFC outside of his overall record, that's a totally different story.
So, fighter punches the other fighter, referee comes in, and imagine that, Stevie, he stops the fight. Correct?
Yes, that's the point we've made here. Right hand levels Mir. Mir can't do anything. He can't even sit up, and the ref stops it, and Hunt walks away. What are you trying to say?
But the referee saw the other fighter was in danger and stopped the fight, correct?
Okay, are you about
That's what a referee does, right?
Are you about to go on a rant about the Hector Lombard-Neil Magny fight? Is that where you're going with this?
Just a little bit.
I had a feeling you might have taken issue with the last minute of round 2, because...
Last minute? Fuck. 90 seconds of the second round.
Well,
there's Mark Goddard in the background.
No, I'm going to say minute, not 90 seconds, and I have to interrupt you and make this point. Neil Magny was in trouble in the first round, and he got about 30 seconds to recover when some referees would have stopped that fight. So if you're being completely fair about it, the first 30 seconds that was given to Hector Lombard in the exact same position was fair. But the next minute after that, he was taking unnecessary damage.
If you watch the replay, you can see Mark Goddard, who's sitting cage side, looking like, he's like, seriously? Stop the fight. Stop the fight. Hey mate, did you see he's not stopping? Oh my god, he's not stopping the, like, he is flipping out on the, you can see them on the camera, right? But I'm watching this fight live, and I'm screaming at the TV, and I rarely scream at the TV anymore because I don't know if I'm jaded or if I've seen way too many fights. But
you kind of expected this to happen, especially given it was in Australia and they came for a show, and you had to think, well, they're probably not going to stop fights early because these fans are really jacked up for these fights.
when the fighter looks at the referee while wailing on the opponent, no, you're not going to stop this? Okay, boom, boom, 10 seconds, okay, boom, boom.
And I'm going to give a little bit of leeway to the referee because
come on.
I said a little. I didn't say a lot. So before
you give leeway to the referees that Rory McDonald beats that natural-born killer in Vancouver.
Dude, let me explain what I mean by a little, and you'll understand how small this amount is.
Okay.
The little that I'm willing to give the referee here is A, he did the same thing for Magny in the first round, so if he's going to give discretion to one guy, he's going to give it to the other. And B, as much damage as Lombard was taking in that last minute of round 2, and I agree it was too much, he didn't completely give up. He kept his hands up. He kept moving. Most of those shots were getting through, but he didn't go completely flat. He wasn't out cold. And I'm not saying that justifies it, because I would have stopped the fight and you would have stopped the fight, but he was not completely out of it. But he was in no shape to continue, and that was clear at the start of the third round.
Yeah, and then 10 seconds later, he's back on his back.
Yeah, he was like a finger flick away from Dream Street at the start of round 3. He had a whole minute.
Slight breeze would have knocked him down in round 3.
Yeah, there was no chance for him in round 3, and Neil Magny knew it and went on the hunt immediately. In fact, he tried to finish him with a flying knee, and that didn't work, and he was like, oh, fuck it, I'll just go back to punching him.
When he had him in that, triangle mount, whatever it was, and started just 1 or 2 punches, the referee was like, oh, that's it. No, that's over. I'm like, where were you in round 2, buddy?
Well,
were you having a fucking Foster in the corner?
The moment he had that full mount, he knew that Lombard had taken enough damage already. There was no reason to let it continue, and thank God he stopped it when he did. But let me be so clear about this that you cannot misunderstand my words in any way, shape, or form. I've given the referee some discretion, but if I was a person in charge of the safety and welfare of fighters, I would discipline that referee for not stopping it in the end of the second round. Any point in that last minute, he could have stopped that fight.
I'd suspend him longer than Dennis Weidman was suspended. And any hockey fans will get that reference.
Yes, I don't disagree with you.
But they're going to show this fight in future training sessions for referees. They're going to say, in this position, how long will it take you to stop this fight? And I bet you anything, 9 times out of 10, a referee would stop that fight a hell of a lot sooner.
Well, every situation is different and every fighter is different. There has to be some agreement that too much is too much, and this was too much. But there are situations, not this one, not these fighters, but there are situations where you would say, this guy is incredibly tough, this is an incredibly important fight, unless he's completely out of it, we let this go.
See, the problem is, what would have happened, and this is in Australia, not so much the stringent regulations that, Texas has, or any other United States, or hell, even Canada.
Well, you're probably mocking Texas, but hey, considering they flagged both Shamrock and Kimbo Slice, let's not knock Texas so much. They're actually doing a pretty good job right now.
But my point is, the referee is there for the fighter's safety, correct?
That's the theory.
That's the theory. What would happen if medical tests came back and Lombard's out for a year because of that?
Well,
talked about Data 5000 last week.
All I could say is Lombard already put himself out for a year testing positive for steroids, so I guess he'd be used to it by now.
Magny's being Magny, and he moves on, and he'll get a bigger fight next time.
Well, you were just looking at the rankings. How many spots did Magny move up?
Oh, I closed that screen. Give me a second.
Let's see who can get to it first. It's a race. Who can pull this up faster?
Oh, I totally closed the... Oh, no, maybe I didn't. Oh, damn it.
Let's see. I got it. Neil Magny moves up 2 spots to number 7.
Who's number 6?
Damian Maia.
Number 5?
Johnny Hendricks.
Ooh.
Yeah, murderer's row at welterweight here. If he's getting any further than he's already gotten, he's got some stiff mountains to climb.
I think Maia is a winnable fight. Hendricks? Ooh, that's a test right there.
Depends on what Johnny Hendricks shows up, because we've seen some chinks in that armor.
And we've seen chinks in Hector Lombard's armor, too.
Oh, we definitely saw them here. He had fire in the first round and nothing after that.
Someone tried to explain to me, you're not listening. When Magny was hitting him, it was like Nick Diaz's pitter-patter punches. I'm like, you want to tell it to Magny that he was pitter-patter punching Hector Lombard in Australia? He'll knock you out.
Yeah, probably. Things we talk about that would be pitter-pat to a fighter would leave us on the barroom floor anywhere, anytime.
Get the name of that. You get the number of that truck.
Indeed.
Oh, his first name was Mac.
Anyway,
all right, Jake Matthews.
Yes, Jake Matthews with the come-from-behind win in the 3rd round.
Yeah, that took a lot of guts there.
Yeah, well, that seems to be his MO right now is, I'm going to survive on guts, because at times he was getting completely pasted by Hollywood Johnny Case, but that was the miracle comeback with 15 seconds left to go. Like, I'm going to get this takedown, and I'm going to keep this mount, and I'm not going to give up. You get out of this rear naked choke, I'm going to get another one. I'm going to just keep going for it until I tap you out. He basically had the Misha Tate performance at the end of this fight.
Daniel Kelly beat Antonio Carlos Jr., 3rd round, minute 36.
Also a come-from-behind win, because Daniel Kelly was, I wouldn't say he was looking bad in the fight, but he wasn't winning up until the 3rd round, and then I guess Carlos Jr. just ran out of gas.
Well, Steve Boss didn't run out of gas. In fact, it took him 52 seconds to knock out James Tahuna. Who had that in their freaking Vegas ticket?
Yeah, you didn't pick that, and I didn't pick that, and I don't know who was more stunned, Tahuna when he hit the canvas or me when I watched it.
You sent me a message on Facebook.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck did I just see?
And I said, hockey players sure are tough.
Well, Steve Boss definitely is. He was the boss here, and he was very enthusiastic about this win. He said, I love Australia, I love the people here, and I love Quebec.
And there is talk that he might be on the Ottawa show because the close proximity, you know how they always love loading up those cards, especially the first time in a new venue, a new city. They're going to try to load it up with as much local area fighters. And if you are in Ottawa, you got to think a lot of the TriStar people and a lot of the gyms down near Toronto are going to be on that card.
You would suspect.
And Beck Rawlings beat Hee Ham 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Don't know about that one, but okay. I don't think Rawlings won all 3 rounds.
I would say, let me just propose this to you. Which one do you think was more important in this fight? The power shots delivered by Beck Rawlings or the volume of shots delivered by Ham? Which matters more?
We're going to have one of those octagon control arguments, aren't we?
Yeah, but I'm asking you which one matters. I'm asking you to tell me right here, right now, does the volume of shots matter more than the power of Rawlings?
I guess it depends on the damage inflicted.
Do you think Ham inflicted more damage, or do you think Rawlings did?
It's a lot closer than people think. The sheer volume of punches was definitely in Ham's favor, but Rawlings, when she connected, they had some pepper on him. But
I'm
you
trying
gotta
to get
think
you to
octagon
declare.
control. What's that?
Declare a winner then. Which one do you think matters more in this fight?
I'm going with him.
I'm going to go with Rawlings because she landed the better shots and hurt Ham more when she did.
But how the judges scored, octagon control is a big component of that. And if you're able to land a lot of punches in that round and you're dominating the action in the cage, you got octagon control.
Yeah, but one punch that wobbles your opponent matters more than 10 that don't.
Yeah, but that's pride rules you're talking of. Who won the fight as opposed to who won the round.
I guess I don't have a problem with the scoring here, but if you do, I understand your logic. I'm just asking you to stand up for it and defend it. If you believe that volume matters more than power, then you're right. And if I believe power matters more than volume, I'm right.
It's one of those discussions where we're not going to see the last of it because this is going to be an issue with the way the fights are scored and judged that will be around for a long time.
Indeed, it's not going away anytime soon.
The crowd, I'm not sure how it came across on your, because you got the Fight Pass or not Fight Pass, what am I talking about? Fox Sports 1.
Right.
Did you hear the crowd saying, please walk away for the main event?
No, I don't recall hearing that.
It was funny because, they made him up like he's the big hero of Australia, and I was surprised. I was like, because I said before, like, I've watched a lot of wrestling over the years, so have you, and you're almost tuned to hear certain crowd chants, before it gets picked up on the and before the announcers recognize it. What are they saying, Like, yeah, like, almost like a sixth sense of what the crowd is chanting. And I was like, are they saying please walk away to their hero right now? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Maybe they meant please walk away and don't hit Frank Mir anymore?
Please stop, he's already dead.
Not dead, 'tis only a flesh wound.
No, you're supposed to that in England. Alan Patrick, Damian Brown. Damian Brown, what do you consider a safe weight cut, Stevie? How many pounds?
Oh.
Short notice fight, you have to give him that, but on a short notice.
Okay, a completely different standard. If you're a fighter with full camp and you got plenty of time, I don't like the idea myself, but I've talked to enough pro fighters that say they know how to do this safely and smartly. I'd say if you got a full camp and you're doing it right, 25 pounds is okay.
Damian Brown, in 7 days leading up to the fight, cut 29 pounds.
That's pushing it for short notice.
In this day and age, and you gotta think back to ONE FC a couple of months ago.
You gotta think back to Dada 5000 even more recently than that.
Well, Dada 5000 didn't pass away.
No, but he came awfully close.
29 pounds a week, good lord.
That's a little too much. When I say cutting 25, I mean doing it mostly over the whole camp and then like maybe 10, 15 the final week. That's what I'm comfortable with, but I know that fighters do more than that.
So, we didn't talk much about Leslie Smith, but you know who she wants next?
I'm not sure, but whoever she is, I would support it, because I have a lot of respect for her. I followed her in Invicta, and I'm glad she's doing well in UFC, and she got a very solid win over Ren Nakai here.
She wants Correa.
If she did beat Betch Correa, that would definitely put her in the hunt for the title.
That would be a fight. That would be, I'm not sure if that's too much for her, though. I know I'm a big fan of hers, don't get me wrong there, but that's a fight, and it's a lot closer. I think she's thinking or crediting, too. I mean, she must be very confident in her game to think that she could take that fight.
You know what? It's the kind of fight, if you're somebody with goals and ambitions, you have to take a challenge like that.
Absolutely.
You may think it's too much for her, but how is she going to prove to herself whether she can be elite in UFC if she doesn't take a fight like that? That's the kind of fight she's got to have.
Oh, Ross Pearson, what are you doing? Speaking of shout-outs to upcoming fights that you want, Ross Pearson called out. All right, I'm going to throw a couple names at you, Stevie, and you tell me if it's a good fight or not, okay? Gilbert Melendez.
He'd probably lose.
Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, it could go either way.
Alvarez.
That,
And not Brian. Not Brian.
yeah, Eddie Alvarez. He'd probably lose that and badly.
Speaking of taking more than you can chew, that's like taking the whole steak and going back to the doghouse.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, buddy. Like, just slow your roll a little bit, you know? Now, we talked about Frank Mir, what's next for him. Can you imagine him being part of the broadcasting team? I mean, we've seen...
Honestly, that's actually the best thing for him to do. He has been a very good commentator and broadcaster in past appearances. He's actually borderline annoying at times with the way he can break down individual parts of a fight and just dissect what a fighter is doing wrong in any position. But for a layperson, that could be incredibly excellent commentary if they don't know anything about the sport, hearing how meticulously he can analyze a position.
Just if you're going to have him in the cage interviewing fighters after their win or their loss, make sure it's on the heavier side of the weight scale there, because I don't want Mir interviewing somebody at 135.
Yeah, that would be the problem, would be if he did octagon interviews. I wouldn't have him do that. I would have him on the commentary panel sitting next to Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, him, Cormier, and Stan.
Exactly. That's a great panel. I would enjoy that.
So let's move on to Bellator.
Indeed.
Bellator 156, Marcos Galvão is fighting Eduardo Dantas.
Yeah, that's the third time now they've tried to put together this fight. They tried last September. It fell apart. They tried just a month ago in February. It fell apart. And believe you me, if it falls apart a third time, I know a fighter who is going to be very, very pissy about that.
Oh, who might that be, Stevie?
Oh, just a little somebody that fought Joe Warren last month in Mulvane. I think you know who.
But spell it out for those who don't know.
The Wolf, Darian Caldwell, who has in no uncertain terms, and you can listen to my interview to confirm this, it's on youtube.com/AngryMarks.com. He said, and I quote, Marcos Galvão and Eduardo Dantas are pussies.
No beat around the bush on that one, eh?
Well, in the same interview, he also said he could smack the piss out of Conor McGregor.
Yeah. Actually, wait a minute. I take that back. He could.
Yeah, considering what Nate Diaz did to him, he might actually have a shot.
Oh, you know the rumor is that that's going to be the rematch at UFC 200?
Yeah, I keep hearing that, and I'm not fond of that idea, so I'm glad we're on this subject now anyway, because I'm really starting to get cheesed at what they're doing to the featherweight division.
Why?
Because if Conor McGregor is not interested in defending this title in a reasonable amount of time, he either needs to give it back to Jose Aldo or vacate it and let somebody else fight for it.
Stevie, I'm going to ask you a question. And you're more of the Bellator fan than I am, correct?
I guess by default I am because I cover their fights, so go ahead.
Conor McGregor has not defended that title in how long?
Well, he won it in December, so it's not been a whole year yet.
I think they should slow down on stripping him of the title. It's not like he's been the champ and hasn't defended for a year, or 18 months, or even 2 years.
I know, but let's also be reasonable here. If you're talking about having him fight Nate Diaz in a rematch at UFC 200, you're basically guaranteeing that for 6 whole months, the entire division is on freeze. You can't have a number one contender because there's no fighter for him to fight. And if I'm Frankie Edgar, I'd be pissed off about that. And from what I've heard, he is.
The reason I asked you about Bellator, who's the heavyweight champ right now?
Vitaly Minakov. And yes.
And when was his last fight?
Yes, they should have stripped him a long time ago because he's fighting fights in Dagestan on UFC Fight Pass and not fighting for Bellator.
The Bellator
Look,
heavyweight champion is fighting on a Zuffa-owned network.
look, dude, I have proposed this to every heavyweight that I've interviewed in Bellator. I've said, do you think there should be a new champion? Do you think your fight should be for the interim championship? Do you think Vitaly Minakov should be stripped of the title? I've said this so many times that, as I said earlier in this show, I'm getting blue in the face talking about it. I think they should be beyond done with Vitaly Minakov. Either he comes back and defends the title, or take the fucking thing off him.
Who does who does Conor McGregor think he is? Dominic Cruz?
Well, eventually they did get fed up with Dominic Cruz and strip him, so I don't want to wait 2 years, though. I'm saying I think it's reasonable, not egregious, to expect your champion to defend the belt at least once every half year. I think beyond that, it's starting to get stupid.
I would put a little bit of a caveat on that. I would say within 6 to 8 months. Give him that window because, as we all know, shit happens outside the cage.
Well, the bigger the star you are, the more flex I would give you. Like, when George St. Pierre was champion, if he only wanted to have a fight every 8 months, I'd have been fine with that, because when he has that fight, it's the biggest fight of the calendar season. It's the biggest pay-per-view because he is the legend. You can do that. But, I mean, people have put so much on Conor McGregor so early in his career that I'm not saying it was overblown, because I still think Conor's really good, and I still think he's a hell of a promo besides whether he's good or not. But maybe people who were trying to declare him the greatest of all time should just slow their roll a little bit. He's not that big of a deal, not yet, and he still needs to prove some things, especially after losing to Nate Diaz. It's time for him to defend that featherweight title and prove that he is what he said he was.
All right, Stevie. Well, we're going to move on to everyone's favorite topic of discussion, fighters who don't know when to hang it up.
Yeah, and who would that be?
George Roop.
I think if he had fought at a reasonable weight for his size, I would have said keep fighting for a while, but the fact that he was over 6 feet and trying to fight at bantamweight, yeah, that's probably not good for your body anyway, so maybe, yeah, he should just hang it up.
He's debuting with Road FC in May. My question is, Road FC?
Well, if you want to talk obscure, I got something to rant about.
Go for it.
Yeah, people who should hang it up for different reasons. Husamar Palhares, who can't seem to control his behavior in a professional fight, was announced as having signed with everybody's favorite bad boy promotion, Venator. The same people who signed Jason Mayhem Miller, who promptly got a DUI, and they excused it in a press release by saying, who hasn't had a few pops before getting in their car? Yeah.
For me?
Yeah, these are the people who justify DUI as okay. These people are scum bags. People have sometimes said, hey, Stevie, why did you cover that show? Why did you cover this show? That's just low class. That's not even quality MMA. Well, guess what? Anything you ever said that to me about is automatically 10 steps above Venator. They think that signing out-of-control lunatics like Mayhem Miller and washouts in both UFC and World Series of Fighting like Husamar Palhares is perfectly okay.
He's not the only name in that promotion that you want to talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot of ridiculous signings. And incidentally, I might add that Husamar Palhares, whether they ever intend to use him again or not, is actually still under contract to World Series of Fighting, and they have released a statement saying, we are enforcing our contract rights. They can't sign him.
Well, you mentioned somebody else who, how do I put this lightly?
Troubled?
I would say a few fries short of a Happy Meal.
Yeah, he's at least a can short of a six-pack.
Think he's scared, homie?
No, he's not scared of anything, and that's the problem.
Why don't you explain who we're talking about?
No, actually, I'm going to let you run with the ball on this one because I already got my rant out of my system. So the floor is yours.
Jason Mayhem Miller. Yeah, him.
He fought the law, and the law won.
Yeah, shout out to our friends at the law. I just, when I heard this, it was like, I almost want to take like a batting helmet and bang my head against the wall.
Just explain to the people listening who don't already know what his latest caper was.
I honestly can't remember. There's been so much.
You really can't. It was only like in the news yesterday.
Oh, this must be new. What possible infraction did he do now?
All right, let me give it to you.
I can't recall off the top of my head now.
I'm gonna give it to you straight off the news wire because otherwise I'm gonna get some part of this wrong, and I don't want to. So I'm gonna pull it from my employer, MMA Mania, and give it to you verbatim from their report. Mayhem Miller arrested again, bail set at a whopping $1 million. Quote, former Ultimate Fighting Championship middleweight Jason Miller was arrested Tuesday on allegations that he vandalized a tattoo parlor.
Vandalized a tattoo parlor. Okay.
Yes. In Orange County, California.
There are a lot of them out in Orange County, though.
I suppose there are.
Well, I mean, if there's anyone in Italy that, is considering being Mayhem Miller's opponent, I'm sure there's a few people out there that would enjoy seeing Miller getting punched in the face.
Maybe so, but
the whole knocking some sense into him or something.
No, I think whatever sense he had has been knocked out of him a long, long time ago.
Well, maybe, he'll get some good money. I'm sure the promotion will pay him very well.
I just don't think anybody should pay Mayhem to do anything. That guy needs drugs, he needs therapy. Well, he probably doesn't need drugs, but he definitely needs the right kind of drugs, like psychiatric drugs.
Well, at least he's not on commentary. You don't want to give him a live mic.
Yeah, that would be a bad idea. Can you believe this guy once coached an entire season of Ultimate Fighter?
I think it's on my shelf somewhere.
Does it even seem real at this point?
I think it's on my shelf. I think I might have that season.
I know you do, but I'm saying look at the depths to which this man has sunk in that time.
People thought Bart Gunn fighting Butterbean at WrestleMania was a good idea.
Yeah. There are no good ideas left with Mayhem Miller, except maybe a year or two.
Have him fight Butterbean. There's your solution.
No. No more freak show fights for him. No more fights for him, period. The only thing that's really going to help him at this point is a year or two, or maybe a few more than that, behind bars, away from the public, where he's not getting into any mayhem. He needs to stop living up to that nickname and just have a sit for a while. And maybe if he's around some other people who are legitimate badasses who could beat a hole in his ass if he steps to them wrong, he might start to think twice about acting the way he acts.
I'm trying to avoid this next story, Stevie, but we have to talk about it.
Well, make sure you're close enough to the mic for the people to hear.
All right. UR Fight had their big show this past weekend.
Yes, and by the way, Tank Abbott was medically disqualified from competing in that show.
You hear what the doctors told him?
I don't know what they told him, only that he was disqualified, but I thought I heard it had something to do with his weight.
They told him he should avoid strenuous exercise.
Well, that sounds like a weight-related problem.
If you're taking a medical to fight Dan Severn, who has been training for this fight since November and has always been in tip-top shape.
Yeah, when does Dan Severn ever not train? I've interviewed the man. I know. He stays in shape.
He's one of the nicest guys out there, too.
Oh, yeah, he's a sweetheart of a man.
Okay, so he was there for signing and, autograph signing, Q&A.
Yeah,
Awesome.
they still paid him because he showed up in shape. It's not his fault.
All right.
So the fight they got in place of Tank Abbott and Dan Severn was a former guest of our show, as a matter of fact.
Shannon Rich.
Cannon Rich. And he won.
There's the good. Yeah, he's a good guest, too.
Yeah, great guy to talk to.
All right, so this show had your grappling, your wrestling, your MMA.
Yes, Chael Sonnen and Michael Bisping went to a draw.
I think I just woke up after watching that.
You know, that's what Chael Sonnen threatened to do, as a matter of fact.
It was very boring.
He promised to make it boring. He cut a heel promo and said, I'm going to get on top of him, hold him down, and whisper in his ear, welcome to the next 15 minutes of your life. Quote, unquote. That's what Chael Sonnen threatened to do.
So he took a page out of the Ben Askren playbook?
Apparently, but he didn't submit him, so that's ruled a draw under the rules of grappling set up for this fight. You had to get a submission to win.
Oh, frig. Do we even want to mention about the boxing fight in this one?
Roy Jones knocked out a scrub. Next.
The scrub was from Mississauga, Ontario.
Sorry.
That's why I think about that fight. Yeah, it didn't take long. Massive faceplant by Phillips. He's, I'm just gonna move on.
Yeah.
The main event that the fans wanted to see was Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio.
Now, I hear that Rampage had some very interesting commentary about this, because Rampage sat in on commentary, for those who didn't know.
Well, that's the thing. The commentary was much better than the actual fights. You had Sean Wheelock, you had JR, you had Rampage.
Apparently, Rampage thought any time that Kurt Angle did something to Rey Mysterio, it was an illegal move. He said he can't do that to a guy his size. That's illegal. Apparently,
you know what's funny?
I'm just going to say there are two different views of this, and I didn't hear it myself, but there are two different views of this commentary. Either you found it wildly entertaining or you found it wildly obnoxious. There's no middle ground on this. And apparently Sean Wheelock was also opinionated.
Another friend of the show.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask him about this at some point, because I guess either off the mic or maybe it was caught on the mic, he referred to something on this show as god-awful. I don't think it was the Kurt Angle-Rey Mysterio match. I think it was something else.
I think it was the grappling.
It might have been. We'll find out later. I'll ask him.
Another announcer that was on this card, there was a picture floating around of the announcers posing like one big group shot. And it's like a who's who of like announcing and like like people who know what they're talking about. Justin Roberts was even there, the old ring announcer from WWE.
Yeah, well, Your Fight is trying to be a big deal. They brought in a lot of talent for this show. They're trying to establish their brand. But I hear the ring was, as our friend Big D from the Super Friends universe, and shout out to them and shout out to the K-Fabulous Lucha Brothers, but I hear this ring was, as Big D would say, rinky dink. I hear it was very poorly constructed.
How stiff do you think a boxing ring is, Stevie?
I think it would probably be as stiff as a WWE professional ring. I think it would have tight ropes and solid turnbuckles. And I hear this ring was anything but.
Yeah, well, the padding wasn't there. I mean, it's a stiff boxing ring. Like, you don't take bumps in a boxing ring, and they had a wrestling match and a grappling match and an MMA fight as well.
I heard that your average indie professional wrestling group that runs events in their backyard had a better ring than this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to disagree with that at all.
Yeah, so, again, depending on your perspective, Your Fight was either wildly entertaining or a wild cluster, but Apparently a very memorable show either way, one that you wouldn't forget if you saw it.
And they were still papering people the day of the fight.
Well, I don't know if the word got out anywhere beyond the websites that you and I are a part of. I don't know that this caught on with the general public in a big way.
But consider the venue. Consider where the show was taking place. Not exactly a top-tier market here.
No, not like it was in New York, LA, or Houston, or some other major venue, city, sporting capital.
I mean, if it was in Dallas next weekend, I mean, maybe they have a bigger chance because they would get, like, the early goers to WrestleMania.
They probably couldn't get a venue in Dallas at this point because they're all booked.
Yeah, it's true. All right, got a little bit more news here. I know, Stevie, you're a big fan of Dancing with the Stars.
You keep saying I'm a big fan of things. I don't know that I agree with your assessment of all these things I'm supposedly a big fan of.
Paige Van Zant finished in...
I'm a big fan of her.
She finished the first round, I guess, tied for fourth.
So she's in the hunt, although I hear the odds makers have made her the favorite.
But you explained she has a history of dancing in her past, right?
Yeah, she did some professional dancing before she got into combat sports, so you could say she's a ringer.
All right. UFC 197 has added Chris Kalides against Sergio Pettis, which I like that fight actually a lot.
Yeah, that's a quality fight for both guys. A chance to improve their standing in UFC.
We talked about the gay porn comment by the New York Assemblyman, which still doesn't make sense to me. Brent Primus fights Liristone Santos at Bellator 153.
Yep.
Which, okay, it's a fight.
I mean, it's a good fight because the only guy that Santos lost to in the last 5 years was John Teixeira, so he's a legit contender.
And, I just want to put a bow on this show and be like, in 2016, we're almost at the end of March of 2016, and professional mixed martial arts is one signature away from being legit.
That's right.
That's amazing, man.
That's a good thing all around.
Yep. Well, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP?
It's the road to WrestleMania. We're gonna run it all down and get the latest from the New Japan Cup, and we'll see what we see.
There's one match on WrestleMania I do want to ask you about, because I'm not going to be on AMP this week.
Shoot.
The ladder match. Do we need another gimmick match at WrestleMania?
I'm gonna take the Brian Alvarez view on this, which is, and I quote, "It's WrestleMania. Who even cares?"
Well, I would come back with the only reason it's a ladder match is because Zayn is doing double duty and the guy he's fighting on Saturday night at NXT is someone that can go.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's going to be in the ladder match at Mania.
He is.
No, Shinsuke Nakamura is not going to be in the ladder match.
Oh, but Zayn is.
Yeah, but that's not what I thought. It doesn't matter. Why are we even talking about this?
I don't know. I just find someone going back to back. I mean, you don't have a UFC fighter going back to back nights on the biggest weekend of the year.
I'm just glad right now there's a couple weeks off of MMA. I'm still doing interviews. I'm still working, so it's not like it's died off for me, but it's, you know what, it's just nice to get a little pause, refresh
Pause
yourself.
for the cause?
Yeah, before you pick up the big action. It's, there's going to be a lot of big fights in April, May, and June, so might as well get this little respite while we can.
So is there any shows coming up? I think John Jones and Daniel Cormier is the next big one, isn't it?
Yeah, 197 next month.
Okay. So we have a little bit of a respite, I suppose, but you're right. Like, you got Jones Cormier, you're going to have the big UFC 200 show, you've got the Memorial Day show in the States, which is Victoria Day up here, I always say. You've got a bunch of shows coming up. It's just this is the time to rest. I mean, the next UFC show is actually not taking place until April 10th. And that's the show in Croatia.
Right.
So, I mean, that one's got Rothwell dos Santos, Gonzaga Lewis, Blachowicz and Pajak. There's some local fighters sprinkled in there as well, as we talked about earlier, but the JDS Rothwell fight, if we're just doing some not booking, but like some future projections, so to speak, what do you do with JDS if Rothwell knocks him out in the first round? I mean, JDS is getting up there in age, and if he gets knocked out, he'll be out for, 5-6 months? That's December, really, if he has a full fight camp? Maybe January? I mean, he's not getting any younger, that's for sure.
I honestly feel like this should have been a talking point for the start of the show, not at the end of the show where we go, that's it this week, what's coming up on AMP? I don't feel like I can get into a full discussion of it right now. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think I can expound on what to do with JDS right now at this point in the show.
Alright. Well,
save it for next week. We got lots of time until the next UFC card, so let's talk about that next week.
Alright, a little teaser, so to speak.
You got it.
If you will.
If you will.
Alright, well, for Stevie J, I'm Peter Ace, a hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening, and as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.